to digress, it's such a dumb story. I remember being in kindergarten and still watching the show, and then we had a dentist come in to teach us about dental hygiene, and her name was Vivian, and she kind of looked like her. So in my head, I was like, "Oh damn, Vivian from Out of the Box is teaching me how to brush my teeth." It's the dumbest story, but it's just I like telling it now because
Oh
it's
my
dumb.
God.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to an episode of The Box Cutter, where we take apart an episode of Disney's Out of the Box and see if it still holds up. I'm your host, Daniel, and my co-host for today is my own brother. Oh, he's so nice enough to do me the favor of coming along and just watching an episode with me. So, hi, Aram. How are you?
Hi, how are you, Daniel?
I'm good. How are you? How are you holding up during this time of caution?
I'm holding up, I'm happy to be working, which is good. I think I was sharing that with you earlier, and it's a really interesting time to take on all these, I think, and all of these interests that we're all maybe always curious in, but never really had enough time to do them.
Exactly.
And I think this podcast is probably a great example of that for you, right?
It is. Very spur of the moment, but it's like, when you have those ideas in your head and you kind of see them through, but they never get off the ground. I've had too many of those, and I just wanted to really get this off the ground.
Well, congratulations on getting it off the ground, because that's a big deal.
Thank you. So besides that, is there anything else people should know about you?
So people should know about me that I'm your older brother. I'm older than you by, I'd say, at least 8 years, if not maybe a little more, a little less. People should also know I work as an architect, designer. I went to school for that. I don't know. I also do ceramics on the side. So I think I'm definitely approaching it very spatially, right? Thinking about all of the exercises that a young mind, a 5, 6, 7-year-old mind is going through. It's interesting. I definitely think I picked up on a lot of the interesting nuances and exercises about space and imagination and creativity and visualizing, which I think are in my wheelhouse of skill sets.
All right, so the episode that we watched was called The Campout Kids. Okay, so the episode starts with Tony and the viewers inside the box. And all I can think to myself is, Tony, how are you so talented? Because why? Because he plays percussion, he plays guitar, and he can sing.
Wow, that's pretty incredible.
Yeah, so he's already in the clubhouse, and he's tuning his guitar that his dad gave him. It looks...
Well, as someone who once bought a guitar to try to learn to play the guitar, to then taking it up for probably about 2-3 weeks, I have to tell you, it's a very difficult instrument to play, and kudos to anybody who knows how to actually play, because it's much harder than it actually seems. Yeah, you're right. I mean, what a talent, right? To be able to play guitar. I mean, it definitely, it's such a magical skill, for especially I imagine being a kid, right? Getting sort of sucked into that, I think, is really fascinating as a kid, seeing somebody play guitar and interact with you in a way that seems very magical and very perhaps foreign.
Yeah, which brings me to the next part where Bibian brings in 3 of the kids, Alicia, Dane, and Jill. And Dane, like you said, Dane, I guess he was like 8 or 9. He's like so enamored by the fact that Tony can play the guitar, and he asked Tony if he could play. And Tony's kind of hesitant, because I guess that really is his dad's guitar. He's like, okay. And Dane, he tries to strum it, but then he quickly gives it back to Tony, because he realizes he literally has no idea what he's doing. But the chemistry between Tony and Vivian and the kids, I just feel it's very organic how it plays out, just because they probably had a script and they kind of told them how to say the lines, but even then, I don't know, it just felt It just feels so organic, like the way that they interact with each other.
Yeah, and I think to your point, so Tony letting Dane play the guitar, right? When Dane sort of becomes curious about the sound he's hearing. I thought it was a great moment where you see examples of how to kind of set boundaries, right? With kids especially, right? And say, hey, be gentle with it. I think is just a great lesson in trusting kids and giving them a sense of responsibility, with objects.
Tony then starts to talk about when he was younger, he used to go camping. He's always on his A game, is what I noticed. And then, like, Vivian, she's usually the one that gets the kids, gets them in the mood for things. And Vivian, I just felt was off her game because, like, the kids were not, like, convinced to go, like, pretend camping. She's like, I know, let's go on a pretend camp out. And they're like, yeah.
Right. This felt like an episode where Tony was taking the lead in some ways.
Let's talk about the first segment.
It's music time.
You remember how it goes, yeah? It was, we're going on a camp out, yeah? I really like this song, in all honesty, because it's like Tony was able to play it with just his guitar, and if it was just the guitar, it would have been a lot better. Again, Vivian, she's just overselling her vocals. She's a really talented, like, theatrically trained singer. But I don't know, it's like this episode, I just felt like she was kind of overselling it. She was overselling it. I'm like, Vivian,
listen, I can't tell what's like too much as a kid watching the show and what's too much as an adult watching the show. So there were many. I think there were some moments, especially with Vivian, where I was like, girl, really? Like, you got to take it that.
Girl, you got to do it like Tony. You got to do it like Tony. Don't be overselling it. But the chorus is definitely catchy,
Yes. It was a good song. It was a good song. I think I bopped more with the itchy, scratchy.
We'll get to that.
Song.
Yeah. So after the song, they're on their pretend camping trip, and they come across a river, which it's like a blanket, and they're trying to find a way across. And of course, Dane solves the problem by picking up a long cardboard piece and makes pretend that it's a bridge. And everyone plays along, but Jill is just being extra. Jill's a little blonde girl. She's just being extra, on her tiptoes. If they were really camping, she's asking to fall into the river with those tiptoe that she did.
Yeah.
Then they get to the jungle gym part of the clubhouse. They pretend it's a mountain, yeah? And they pretend climb it. And then there's like this really weird like angle, like when they get to the top. I get like it's supposed to. I know that the show is supposed to get kids engaged, but like I don't know, the angle is just stood out to me because it's like Tony's already tall, but then they like angle it like at a low angle, pointing up. And Tony just mentions how the view is so beautiful.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're using the magic of TV and cameras to create some atmosphere around imagination and using and thinking you're maybe high up or ascending, right? I thought it was really cute the way they all kind of climbed the mountain very differently. Some were like scaling it like they were rock climbing, and others were like hiking it like they were had hiking poles or something, which I think is.
Once they get to the top, Vivian, this is where I put Vivian gets her groove back. Because she makes pretend that the slide is a waterfall. And everyone's just like, their tones change real quick. And they're like, yeah. But I will say on a side note, that slide is so underwhelming. It just, I don't know. It's too lateral.
Come on. Daniel, you are lucky that they have an indoor slide. Who has an indoor slide? Come on.
Apparently they do with their imagination, with their collected conscious imagination. They can, astral project a slide in there. They built the clubhouse in one afternoon, and they were able to furnish it too. So then Tony starts to talk about mosquitoes and poison ivy. It is a good teaching moment because some kids don't know what poison ivy is. So
I mean, teaching insofar that poison ivy is itchy, but you got to know what poison ivy looks like for you to know not to touch it, because that
These
boa
are
that they
these are
use,
these are children that said at the beginning of the episode they have never gone camping. All they know is the suburbs.
very true. But you know what, Tony and Vivian, I agree that could have been a very good educational moment, but maybe flash a photo of what that poison ivy looks like or something. Like, I just saw a green boa and I'm over here thinking like, okay, that is not.
They bring to light poison ivy, and that is a moment where for their parents to, further educate them. Vivian is more the artsy fartsy one, definitely, and Tony's more the musical one. So Vivian's kind of like the lead, but she's taking a backseat to Tony, and she's trying to force herself to the front by doing all this extra stuff. So then she's like, let's pretend this green boa is poison ivy, and we got to go around it. And of course, everyone touches it.
It's music time.
The next song is the Itchy Scratchies, yeah?
Yes.
And you said you like this one more, yeah?
Yeah, it was a little country, right? Like it was like a little.
I got more of like a 1950s like rock type of vibe.
Yeah, like, is it like rockabilly? I don't remember what it sounds like now, but it was very.
I love it and I hate the song at the same time because it makes me itchy.
I will say though that I think the Itchy and Scratchy song is very catchy. I love the sort of the movement of it, like the sort of itching your body and scratching yourself, and the rhythm. I felt like they were very much one, which was really fun.
You're making me itchy.
I will say, I was like, wow, this is pretty good songwriting. I mean, I'm not an expert on songwriting, but it's pretty catchy.
So then after they pretend to be Itchy and Scratchy, Tony goes ahead and he shares how to use, how he used to go fishing with his dad, and they'd spend hours fishing, and sometimes they'd never catch it, but apparently it was a lot of fun. I've never gone fishing, but spending hours standing still and, having a false hope that you'll catch a fish doesn't really sound fun. It sounds kind of boring.
It's definitely, I will tell you, it's much harder than it looks, because there's, and I think I have been fishing, and I want to say it was at a lake. There's some challenge in sort of the way you cast or the way you throw your fish hook out into the water, right? Like sometimes it gets stuck behind you, or like it doesn't quite go the distance you want it. So there's there's a whole skill to that, but it was, fishing to me, it seems like such a fun thing as a little kid, right? The idea of like pulling something out of a different environment than you, and that there's this like mystery behind the water of like what could possibly be down there. So I don't know. I thought it was kind of cool that they took really fishing on, and that they actually made it happen as an activity with their imaginations and using the rulers.
Let's go ahead and talk about the arts and crafts then of the episode.
It's arts and crafts time.
So the arts and crafts for the segment is paper fish and pretend fishing lines. We see that Dane can draw. That's what I have written. Dane can draw, because apparently he drew a fish silhouette from scratch.
Yeah, I was very impressed with his abilities to just draw that fish, very well proportioned fish. And so confident too, like no kind of second guessing. It was just like one straight line that created this cute little fish.
And I paid attention. To make sure that there was like no like light strokes of pencil on the paper. No, like one of his personality traits. He's a good drawer.
Yeah. I mean, same. I definitely was like, okay, he can draw, because I was waiting for him to kind of mess up and for that fish to become some other blob, and it sure did.
And Miss Alicia is queen of compliments, because she's like, you're really good at drawing, Dane. And then she's like, you're really good at cutting, Vivian. And everyone's just like laughing about it.
Yes. Hey, you got to know how to give a good compliment. I love that.
No, she's got to know how to stick around for another season.
That's right.
Once Vivian gets the silhouette from Dane, she like overlaps it with a few pieces of paper. I've tried that technique. Results may vary. it depends on how sharp your scissors are. Because, like, when you try cutting it, the paper tends to move around a bit. But I don't know if you noticed when Vivian was cutting, Dane, he mutters to Vivian. He's all like, I think I know the drill. And then Jill is all like, me too.
Yeah.
But they're like muttering it under their breath.
Yeah, that cutting moment was definitely like, okay, I was paying close attention that Vivian would not mess it up, right? Like, girl, don't let that paper slide because then these fish are going to come out looking like octopus, and we don't want that.
This isn't even the first time that something like this happens. There are plenty of episodes where the kids mutter under their breath stuff. Or they say things that it's obvious that this took more than one take to record. I appreciate Vivian, though, cutting the paper so the viewers don't get any idea of cutting the paper themselves. They see a grown-up cutting it. And so if it was like another kid cutting it, it would kind of give the impression of, oh, they can cut it, so that means I can cut it. So I appreciate them having, Dane handing the paper to Vivian and Vivian cutting it out. So that way it shows, get an adult to help you. They then, after they're done making the fish, so Vivian gets these yardsticks. You could probably get like a broom or something. And so she gets yarn, yardsticks, and paper clips.
Yeah,
and
I'm
so
trying to think of how would I create a fishing line today? It'd probably be a broomstick or
a broomstick or a mop stick, and then you get like some string or like some ribbon or.
So I don't know if you picked this up, but it was really interesting how they use the tape to get some like stickiness and use it as a hook line, right?
Yeah.
To catch the fish, and then. When they went fishing, I was like, this shit is not going to work. This is not going to work.
I know. I was
heavy.
like...
The tape is not enough. And
I know. No, it would have...
Like,
no, it would have worked. It would have worked if they put the tape on the fish and not on the paper clips. Like, I feel like if they would have put the tape on one side of the fish, like on all the fish, if they did like that wrapping technique that they did, and then put it on the fish... I think it would have been easier because the paperclip would have had a wider... Like, the paperclip would have been stuck to it.
I don't think so. No, I think it wasn't going to work unless you had some weight on the fishing hook. The hook needed to be heavy to press down and like really like get the tape to stick onto the...
Or what if they... or they could have kept the tape on the fishing lure and then put the tape on the fish so that way like you have two sticky surfaces touching each other. So I think that would have worked too. But I also wrote the segment music for the arts and crafts is very country bumpkin. Kind of gives kind of like that 90s Walmart commercial feel. But I think it's a great indoor activity.
Yeah, I mean, I would absolutely do it with my kids, especially right now in this quarantine. I'd be like, listen, kids, we're going to go fish some fish.
You're going to go fish your dirty clothes and put it in the hamper.
And you're not going to eat until you catch at least 3 fish. You hear me?
But, I think our niece would have liked that episode better because it's not so hand-holding. And it kind of brings ideas to your mind of what you can do to camp indoors. So then once they're done, cheating at fishing, because, oh no, I know Jill, Jill knew she was invisible that whole episode. So she was like, oh, I'm a cheat. And then she's like, oh my God, I got one. Sure, Jill.
Sure, Jill.
Nice try, Jill. Then once they're done, Tony recaps what they did and then introduces his favorite part of camping. He recaps we went hiking, we caught fish, and then he said that his favorite part was at the end of the day that they would tell stories. So let's go ahead and talk about the story time.
It's story time.
So the story time was a twist on the form... it was a twist on what the format usually is. They usually act out a variant of, like, a story. But this time, in this episode, Tony gets the kids involved by kind of passing along the story and helping them help to make it their own. So they're doing a retelling of Little Red Riding Hood. What are your thoughts on how Tony gets the kids involved with passing along the story? Like he'd start the story and then he'd pass it along.
I mean, I thought it was a great way of getting them to tell the story, right? It's a sort of acting theater storytelling method, right? Where you got to learn the story ahead of time and you kind of each act out your role, which is really fun, right? And then I think they use color very nicely and tech and small accessories like hats and vests to take on the characteristics of these different characters in the story.
Yeah, and it's not even like they're not even high-end production costumes. It's like anything that you can find in your house, fluffy hats or like a beanie or anything like that. Like I thought the story though was kind of a little depressing in all honesty because it's like Little Red is trying to catch fish and then everyone like says hi and then they're like bye. It's kind of like he's having a pity party of I have no friends and he can't even catch fish either.
Mm-hmm.
But then I kind of knew it was coming that they were throwing a surprise party. I just like caught myself smiling.
Yeah, I think I got a little lost in that story.
Well, yeah, because it was like it is a little like twisty turny because it's something that they don't normally do. They normally act out the story, but sometimes they will do that thing where they tell a story and then they pass it along.
Mm-hmm.
Tony, again, very talented. Because why? Because he had the low voice, and he's somehow able to get those high notes. Playing the granny, playing Little Red, he's somehow able to get that high pitch.
Mm-hmm.
So after all that, Vivian takes the kids home. She's basically like, we got one more hike. The hike home. Get out. Get out. I've had you for 20, 30 minutes. Get out. I've had it with each other. I had it with each other.
She's done. She
is done. This is something that they always do. Either Tony and Vivian will take them home, but then the other will kind of like offer rhetorics to the viewer. Maybe you can try pretend fishing or making a tent in your living room and, telling stories with your friends. And I do kind of I like that they have those rhetorics at the end of each episode, just to kind of like spark some ideas in the viewer.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, I think it's always great to like leave with a challenge, right? Or leave with a task of like, hey, how about you try this at home? And I think camping is one of those things that's like, I remember taking out the cushions from our couch and like putting them together and making a fortress, or taking a blanket and stretching out over a couple chairs, and it's like one of the easiest things to do.
Yeah, and it does give an accessibility to people that probably can't afford camping. I mentioned this in my pilot that my favorite line in the intro is "There's music in our hands and pots and pans," because that line kind of symbolizes that we can make things practical.
Yeah, and we can make things come alive too with the action and the magic of our hands and our will.
So, at the end of each episode, they do the goodbye song, and when Vivian doesn't oversell her singing, her singing voice is actually pretty comforting. She seems very in her element.
Very much so. Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know if you picked up on this, but there's this thing at the end when they sing their goodbye song where they rub their hands, snap, and clap.
Yes. Oh, yes. Yeah, yes.
It's something that everyone remembers. Even when you're super young, you still try and recreate it. Because even then, it's like they're trying to engage, so it's not a one-sided goodbye. All right, so besides that, let's talk about the acting. So I'll just, list off names, and then you can give me your opinion. So first, let's start with Tony.
I mean, I think Tony is, in my eyes, probably one of the stars of the show. He comes across as somebody very sincere, somebody who doesn't maybe have to overstretch themselves to make a connection with the audience, which is always, I think, really special when you see that.
Mm-hmm. I wrote, he has good timing, and maybe that's because he's a musician, but he has really good timing. with his acting, when to say his lines, and he just really he always gives a solid performance. So let's move on to Vivian. Normally, Vivian is really, she's more of the one you tend to pay more attention to, and Tony's more of her, like, backup. But she just oversold it in some parts of this episode. What about Dane?
I think he's again probably one of the magical ones on the show. He's very charismatic. The way he comes across on TV is very good. I think he's got good charm.
Yeah, I wrote he's the best out of the three. He gives good facial variance, and he's always like in the moment.
Mm-hmm.
He's not like zoned out for like a minute. He's always like engaged, and that's like, he's a really good performer. What about Alicia?
Alicia, I think, would probably be my second favorite. Although I think she's really cute and very bubbly, and I think she has a little bit of an attitude, which is so cute to watch on the show.
Yeah. I thought she was okay, but she looked zoned out sometimes. Like when they were doing the arts and crafts, she was like just sitting there.
Mm-hmm.
Does she look familiar to you?
She does not, no.
Alicia is actually Alicia Allen, the actress that was in School of Rock.
Oh, interesting.
She was in Are We There Yet? She was in a lot of those movies from like the early to mid 2000s.
Right.
Yeah, I was like surprised to realize that going back that Alicia is the same one that was that girl with the braces and the glasses in School of Rock.
Oh, I did not know that. I did not know that at all.
And lastly, we have Jill.
Yeah, I think Jill, frankly, probably is like the least interesting. And I feel bad saying this about a kid who's probably an adult now, but
She still acts.
it's just, I think the personality or the charisma just doesn't quite come across the way some of the other characters.
I think in this episode, she faded into the background. Normally, she's very. If you were to ask me, oh, what is a kid? Like, how do kids act? I would probably point to Jill because she's very. She's very much normal in the sense of, show me how a kid acts, and I'd show you Jill. But in this episode, she was like, she very much faded into the background, and then when she was trying to push herself into the limelight, it was very extra. So she was kind of like, she suffers from Jan Brady syndrome in this episode.
Yeah, I mean, I just felt like she was probably one of the least memorable ones on the show.
So that was Campout Kids. Let's break things down. Let's talk about the theme. Do you think the theme held up? Would you say like the theme is something kids will still be interested in?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think camping is one of the things kids will be interested in.
I'd say the theme is still, like, it still holds up. Kids will still be interested in wanting to learn more about camping. What about the music? Do you think the music is something that, is it still good, like, is it dated or is it, like, still a good quality?
Oh, wait, the music?
Yeah, like,
Yeah.
The camp out song and the itchy scratchies.
No, I think music, when it's good, it's timeless. And, you can maybe refresh it, do some new instrumentation to it. But some of those songs, I think if the lyrics are good, they're good and they'll be catchy.
Yeah, me too. I really liked the camp out song because, like I said, all you need is a guitar and you can sing it if you remember it. And I like that one, and I know that you like the itchy scratchy more than the camp out song, but I guess that's a yes then?
Yes, that is a definite yes.
Okay, arts and crafts then. Do you think it's still something practical kids can do with their parents? The fishing, or paper fish and pretend fishing lines.
Yeah, I very much think still a lot of those activities are very practical and very accessible too. Scissors, paper, I think most people will have that around their house.
People can cut out the fish and then they can like put tape over them, kind of like to laminate them, make some pretend fishing hooks, and then have that be like an indoor activity. So like kind of like make a play set of it, so that way when it is like you can't go outside because it's raining or because it's too cold or because it's too hot, you can do this activity inside. The story, what did you think? Is it something that do you think it was boring, or do you think it was something that was entertaining?
I thought, from a child's point of view, I thought it was a pretty straight story to follow along, which is always good, right? It had an arc. It had some sort of some conflict, and it resolved with a nice surprise. So I'd say it was pretty good from a child's point of view. Yeah.
I more appreciated the twist on the traditional storytelling that they do, where they just go through the story dressed up, where Tony and Vivian kind of passed along the story so that way the kids can kind of like get ideas and chime in and such. So for me, I still feel like the story that they presented holds up. What about you?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think so. I think the story definitely holds up.
Okay, and lastly, the acting for this particular episode overall, as an overall.
Yeah, I mean, I thought as an overall, it's a kids show. I thought it was fun. It was upbeat. It was convincing. The kids come across as sincere. I think there are some highs in terms of like Tony and his connection and his chemistry, and some of the kids I think are better than others. And so generally, I'd say yes, the acting is convincing.
I see. I thought the acting for this episode, it was good. It was solid. It wasn't anything stand out, but it was also nothing bad. It was just solid in my book. So overall, I'd say it still holds up. So I guess overall, this episode would still hold up. Yes?
Yes, I would think so. Yeah.
So before we go, is there anything you have coming up, or anything that you want to plug at all?
No, I think I have a lot of, if you're interested, I do ceramic work on the side. You can follow me at Clay Queries, that's ClayQueries on Instagram, and give that a follow. This was fun. This is a really interesting opportunity for me to step back and get in touch with my childhood self again and think about how those early exercises in creativity and imagination and exploration probably have very much fueled my skill set today.
All right, then. Well, there you have it. That was our analysis on Campout Kids. For more, if you like what you hear, go ahead and subscribe to my YouTube page, The Box Cutter Podcast. Again, my name is Daniel. With me was my brother, Aram. Leave a comment, send me an email, tell me what you like, tell me what you don't like, tell me what I can pick up on, improve, and what not. Because it takes a village to raise something beautiful. So, in the words of Tony and Vivian, so long, farewell, until we meet again.